Hallihallo! Heute lernen wir etwas mehr über den Imperativ. Und zwar ist das auf Englisch Command Form. So hi guys, today we're going to learn a little bit about the imperative, which is a voice in German. It is not a tense, but it does lead to conjugation. And in English, we usually talk about this as command form. But it is not just used for commands. So the imperative is used for three things. One is commands. Another one is to make requests. And another one is to give advice. Oops. So we use it for all those things. And as I said, it is a conjugation. Okay, what that means is you're changing the verb. So in English we would say something like get up, right? There's your conjugation. In German, we would do the same thing. We would say steh auf. So hopefully you guys remember that the actual infinitive or the actual verb that means to get up is aufstehen, which of course is a separable prefix verb. So I'm going to add the little dot right here just to show that. So we have aufstehen. And whenever you're making the command form then, notice how we're still reversing it. We have an exclamation mark, and then we have no endings. That is just one form of command form, just one conjugation. So today I'm going to go through and show you three forms. I'm going to go through all three of them. The first one is going to be the one for du, or you singular. You singular informal. The second one I'm going to show you is for ihr, so you plural informal. And the third one is for our capital Z, so for you formal. Those are the three forms we're going to talk about today. Now, some of you may already have connected the dots here. We're talking about these three forms because when you're giving a command or giving advice or making a request, that usually means you are talking to someone. Now, in all reality, we actually have another form of this. We also sometimes make wir, so including ourselves, command forms. We are not going to talk about that in this chapter. So we're not going to learn this form. We're just going to focus on the three U's whenever we do command form for now. Okay, so how do we do it? Let's start with the do commands. So all of this info is just for do commands. So you saw the example up at the top. I had steh auf for my infinitive, aufstehen. And again, that was a separable prefix verb. So what you need to do whenever you're making a do command is you're going to take the stem of the verb. So in this case, let's ignore the prefix for a second. We have steh, and we just completely drop the ending, right? So we're going to separate right here, drop the ending. So no ending, so I just have steh. Notice that's my first element. That is my very first element. And then just like we did with separable prefix verbs before, the auf goes to the end. And then we have the exclamation mark. If I had anything else in that sentence, so if I wanted to say something like get up tomorrow morning, then all of that stuff would go in between. So I would say something like steh morgen früh auf! Exclamation mark. So the conjugation in this case is really, really simple because I'm just using my stem with no additional endings. So the do command is the stem with no additional endings. Now, out of curiosity, does anybody see the subject of the sentence? Trick question. There is no subject, so we're missing a subject pronoun. So again, this is do command, so there should be a do in there somewhere. And that is why the verb is in first place. So there is no do. This is where my mysterious subject is. That subject is just missing. It just disappears in this case. So you just need to know that there is no subject. You're starting with the verb. So you have stehe morgen früh, and if it's a separable prefix verb, the prefix, just like before, goes to the end. Now that seems way too simple, I am sure. So there are some additional rules you need to remember. Those rules are, two of them right here, stem changes and stems ending in D or T. So for the stem changes, if you have a verb that has a stem change from an E to an I, or an E to a long I, the IE, you are going to have to maintain that stem change. So you're going to end up with the stem change, the changed stem without ending. So an example of the first one would be nehmen. Nehmen, that was your verb to take that you learned. And the stem change for that, when we had it, was nimm. And of course, when conjugated for do, you had that ST, so nimmst. So you had an E to an I. In this case, we have some additional ending changes or stem changes, but just E to I change. An example of the second one would be lesen. That was your verb to read. And when you had lesen, it became liest, conjugated for do. So when you have these, you need to remember that stem change, because that stem change is going to transfer over into your sentence. So what you're going to do for the first one, you would have a sentence like nimm. You're dropping that ending, and then I'm just going to add a sentence for you. Das Buch mit. Now, I have mitnehmen as my full verb, but there's your changed stem. Okay, for lesen, you would have lies das Buch. There's your changed stem. So here was the ending, there was the line. We made that E into an IE. We didn't have an extra S whenever we did the conjugation. So lies das Buch, exclamation mark. Okay, that's the rule for stem changes. Notice the stem changes with A's going to A umlaut, or AU going to A umlaut with a U. Those do not get maintained. It is just these stem changes right here. The second rule was the stems ending in D or T. So for stems ending in D or T, an example of a verb for that would be finden. So you have to find. And this is where you would draw that line, right? So there's your D. And when you have that, you add an E. So it's very, very similar to whenever you conjugated. When you conjugated finden, you had to add an extra E. So we said things like findest, findet. In this case, you still do that. So you would have finde deine Hausaufgaben. Find your homework. So here's my stem, and I'm adding that E. Okay, so anytime you end in a D or a T, add an E. Okay, the third rule I've sort of already mentioned, and that is separable prefix verbs. And if you have verb-verb combinations, which we've talked about a little bit. That second part, in this case the prefix, in this case the second verb, in this case the noun, they all get pushed to the end of the sentence. So we already had aufstehen, so I'm going to just use that one again. So steh bitte früh auf. You have HD in the front and your prefix in the back. And that should be an exclamation mark, not a period. Right? Your prefix goes to the end. Then we have verb-verb combinations. So for example, schwimmen gehen, to go swimming. Geh bitte mit uns schwimmen. So here's your verb, right? We have gehen, you just dropped the en. And your second verb, that infinitive that you use with it, is at the very end. And again, that's an exclamation mark, not a period. A verb-noun combination would be something like Fußball spielen, to play soccer. We did it with a lot of the sports. So spiel doch morgen mal Fußball. So spielen, no ending in first place, and here's your noun that is part of that phrase at the very end. Now you may have noticed some other little words that I've been using, right? You may have noticed some of these words. I have bitte in here, I have doch, and I have mal. These words are super, super common when you're using imperative. Now, what do they mean? These are things that are known as flavoring participles. And they don't directly translate well at all. When you translate them, you really just have to kind of change the meaning slightly. The bitte itself means please, so you're just being polite. Steh bitte früh auf. Please get up early. Now really, when you're saying this, you're not just saying please, but you're saying you never do this, let's actually do it for once, right? That's what that bitte shows you. When you have this doch mal, spiel doch morgen mal Fußball. Mal we have seen before, and it means once. So einmal once, for once. So when you have this, spiel doch morgen mal Fußball, it's really for once, please play soccer with us. That's what that doch mal indicates. So let me show you a sentence with it and then one without it and show you what the difference is. So we have something like gehen Sie doch mal zum Zahnarzt. Okay, gehen Sie doch mal zum Zahnarzt. So here's your doch mal in there. What this means is you should really go to the dentist. As opposed to gehen Sie zum Zahnarzt. That just means go to the dentist. So that doch mal is adding a little bit of power behind that statement.